Welcome to DrinksWorld, where we celebrate entrepreneurs in the beverage industry. And today's guest is Emil Dulk, the founder of Liquidity. Emil is a well-known wine and spirits aficionado who has made it his mission to bring some of the world's finest and rarest spirits to South Africa. So please welcome Emil to the show. Welcome to the show, and today I'm privileged to welcome Emil Dulk to the show. Emil is a well-known spirits aficionado, and you come from a wine family, don't you?
Yes, that's right. My family started a tour and wine estate in 1999 and recently sold it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was sold about 3 years ago to a Swiss consortium.
Okay. And was that not something that you were interested in?
No, look, I started my own business on the spirit side of things in 2003. So my own business was always going to be my future. And when we looked at the tour, and my parents obviously said that they wanted to retire and they didn't want the burden. My sister lives in Portugal and my brother's in England. So the only one that could have done it is really me. And with my other interests, it just didn't make sense.
Okay. And tell us a bit about your journey. How did you end up in the spirits business?
By default, really. I studied as an industrial designer at the Cape Tech. Went overseas like so many graduates to go and look for work, and couldn't find any. The England at that point was in the middle of a recession, and there was no work in the design industry, and those who wanted to give you jobs said that you had to work for free. So I tried that for a little bit, but working all the nights in bars and during the day doing those things didn't really work out. And I came across a couple of really good spirits brands that I thought would do well in South Africa, and I thought there would be opportunity because we'd never seen the premium side of spirits so much, at least the ultra premium. I think there's a big misconception about what is premium and ultra premium. So we looked at ultra premium, and we looked at categories specifically that the market had never seen before, and they're usually quite controversial. Bourbon was the first thing that we looked at, and at that point in South Africa, your mainstays were things like Jack Daniels and Jim Beam and Wild Turkey, but none of their super and ultra premium offerings. So we launched the first single barrel bourbons in South Africa, and we brought in what became icons around the world, in the likes of Pappy Van Winkle and George T. Stagg and Sazerac from the Antique Collection. And there it started. So we started looking for more categories like that, and it branched out into cachaça from Brazil, which we'd never had before. We launched Patron Tequila in 2007. And Compass Box 2005, and yeah, we've been looking for amazing controversial brands ever since then. Okay,
and does that mean there's automatically a demand for those products, or is it still the same grind, and or is it just a handful of retail clients that buy those products?
Okay, so yeah, look, in the early days, people didn't spend money on expensive spirits. So we were coming into a market that didn't exist at all. The people would drink things like Glenfiddich, but that would be a rare occurrence. And that's typically your dad and your grandfather who used to drink it, and it's the bottle that he was given for his 20th anniversary at work. So super premium was definitely not something that people consider drinking, and the whole movement around drinking less but better hadn't even existed. So it was very difficult back then. We couldn't give away the bourbons because everybody was drinking Jack Daniels and lime, and to sit and sip this stuff neat was just unthinkable. But I'd like to think that the industry came a long way since then, and I think that we've always been a few years ahead of the curve when it came to a lot of the products that we launched. And slowly but surely things are getting there now. We launched the first sipping rum in South Africa in, around 2008, 2009. And people just couldn't get their heads around the fact that you could sip rum. Now we've got South Africans producing the stuff. I'd like to think that the gin craze did a lot for super premium spirits in South Africa. And it certainly opened people's eyes to spending better money on better products and not necessarily drinking so much of it, but just investing more. And I think it's been a trend all through lockdown as well. A lot of our customers have been telling us that whiskey sales have gone through the roof, and it's not just cheap whiskey; it's all the expensive stuff. We've certainly seen a growth in Arran single malt and Compass Box of 50 to 100% in the last year. And what a lot of the retailers have been telling us is that because they haven't been going out, people are spending their money drinking at home, and therefore it's cheaper to spend money on a good bottle of whiskey than buying a couple of Jamesons in a bar where they charge you 60 Rand a shot. So I think a lot of people are moving in that direction, and quality is becoming more important than drinking for the sake of it.
Yeah, I think there's obviously the trend for people who drink from a badge, and then there's people who understand the quality of the spirit. And I think you probably in the latter.
Yeah, unfortunately, we still sit with the issue of badge drinking. It's like I say to a lot of people that in certain cases, people don't really drink cognac; they actually drink brandy with a badge, and the same thing goes for champagne. But it's where people start. So you've got to get into the industry one way or another, and by drinking a badge, it helps create a safe entry into the category, after which you can then go and explore.
Yeah. So how big is wine in your portfolio?
I'd say, well, in volume, it's probably 60-40, and in value, other way around. So we sell a lot less volume of the high-end spirits, but a lot more on the wine side. But I think the average value of the spirits we sell is much higher than the wine. Okay.
Tell us a little bit about your partners then. I mean, I remember visiting Helmut Volderos many years ago before obviously the gin craze. I visited him because he made some beautiful Kirschwasser or Williams.
Oh, grappas and eau de vie, yes.
Yeah, the grappas wasn't quite my thing. I wasn't quite ready for those. I still don't think I am. I opened a bottle of 2013 Williams last night, which I found in a liquor city. But how long have you been working with the Volderos?
Volderos, it's probably close on 12 years now, 13 years. So we got involved at quite an early stage. They didn't really have much of a trade presence. I think there was a lot of retail sales going on, but it was a hand sell, and again, it was a category that at that point nobody really. I mean, grappa was like you say, it's a difficult thing to stomach, and most people aren't familiar with good grappa. So the people who would buy it and drink it was very little. So we got in there and we started trying to teach people about eau de vie and distilling fruits. And it's never really been a very popular category in South Africa. For what reason, I don't know. I think maybe because it is destined to be consumed neat. We're not really a big country for neat drinking spirits. We like to mix everything with everything else. So I think it's a culture that comes with the temperature and the actual culture of Europe. And slowly but surely people get into it.
Yeah, like the ski slopes.
Exactly. Especially the Kirschwasser and the Williams Pear.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the other partners. You've got some really guys with really interesting stories. If you don't mind sharing it just a little bit, that we can get an idea of the guys that you deal with.
Sure. Where to start? On the wine side, obviously we've got the Turin, who was credited with producing one of the first. It was the first high-end Bordeaux blend in 5-varietal Bordeaux blend in South Africa. And I'd like to believe that we were partly responsible for the growth and the popularity of Bordeaux-style blends, which at the point of release in South Africa wasn't very popular because people used to judge the quality of wine based on the single varietals they were making, and blends just wasn't it. So that obviously came a long way, and we held many accolades over the years. Furthermore, we work with a company called Vina Cobos out of Argentina. And for those of the listeners who know international wines, the owner was the founding maker of Opus One, who is seen as the wine out of the US in their wine district region there. So he made that for 18 years and then moved down to Argentina and basically created the Argentinian Malbec category as we see it today. On the whiskey side, we work with Compass Box, who very few people know that they are accredited with saving Scotch whiskey as a category, and basically throwing the rule book out of the window and going to bartenders and to young people who had stopped drinking Scotch and saying, listen, let's just make drinks with it. All it is at the end of the day is just liquid. So drink it any way you like, but drink it. And a lot of the philosophies that they piloted in the UK and the US and some of the top cocktail bars were adopted by the bigger cocktail groups and eventually by the big single malt companies as a way of saving the industry. So while they didn't necessarily have the most visible impact, they had the most physical impact, and very few people are even aware that Compass Box was so relevant in the early days. And from there, where do we begin? We've just started bringing in mezcals from a very small producer in Oaxaca. Their focus, they launched two brands, one called Los Danzantes, which means the dancers, and the other Alipus, which essentially is a slang term for a drink in Mexico.
Okay.
Alipus specifically focuses around terroir and how the plants are affected by terroir over the seasons while growing. So it's a single village project that's produced by small producers, and some of the most handmade artisanal products we've ever seen. Some of the mezcals are produced in clay stills. They're macerated by hand with big hammers. They're done in clay pots. They're cooked in wood ovens underneath the ground and with volcanic rock. So again, a category that we haven't really been exposed to so far, and we hope to explore that. Tequila we did in the early days with Patron, and we all know how well that's done. And we're busy working on a new tequila brand now. So there's one of the oldest distilleries in Mexico. They're one of the producers that the industry at large looks up to, purely because of their long-standing history and production. They've been making tequila in the same spot for 5 or 6 generations. They ultimately committed to their craft, and it's unlike a lot of other brands that we see out there. These guys own their actual stills. They made it in traditional ways. They own their own agave, and they buy some in, but through contracts that they have with growers. And really exceptional stuff. So the people who say that one night I had too much tequila should feel safe drinking this stuff, because again, it's made to sip, not to shoot. So much more refined.
And that's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, our newest project, we're about to launch Cocky Vermouth. It's one of the original vermouth producers out of Torino, Italy. The founders and the owners are also on the board of the Torino Vermouth Association. And they produce some of the most classic styles of vermouth worldwide, and one of the biggest followings for bartenders around the world.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, so that's actually arriving this week.
And then tell us a little bit about the rum that you've got.
Well, we've got two rums. At the moment, we work with the rum that's been developed by Volderos under the Rogue label, and it's what they like to call a Cape spiced rum, and taking the hint from the Fynbos, which is a category that they pioneered in the late 90s, along with the Stellenbosch University. They thought, well, why not start implementing some of these spices and flavors into good aged agricole rum. So that was released a few months ago, well, about 6 months ago. And then we work with Diplomatica out of Venezuela. And they are also one of the top producers of aged sipping rums. Their game is to make molasses-based rums aged naturally in wooden casks. And they use barrels typically from anything from French to American oak. They use Spanish Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez casks. And yeah, just absolutely amazing products. We're about to launch the single vintage product. We've just got the release papers for it. So again, we're pushing the boundaries there, and the high-end Ambassador rum is available at about 4,500 rand a bottle.
And typically, how many retail outlets do you get for these products?
For the Reserva Exclusiva, which is our main brand that we push, we've got quite a few. We've listed in Pick and Pay now. We in many of the higher end Spar Top shops.
Okay.
Norman Goodfellows. So a lot of the big retailers, Take-A-Lot's taken it on, and it's doing very well. It's really doing extremely well, and we're very happy with it. Aged sipping rums like these, they're seriously growing in popularity, and as soon as people taste them, we can see that the response is one of delight as opposed to shock. Yeah, I think it's a category that's going to do a lot of things. It's going to require a lot of education. But one thing that's certain is that rum is a category that women can enjoy tremendously. We, in the early days with Pirate, it was by far our biggest market for the rum was the woman.
And do you think that trend will also work for the local rums?
I think the local rums still have a way to go.
In terms of quality.
In terms of quality, yes. I've tasted quite a few of them, and I think that, number one, it takes a lot of time to get to where these guys are. The big international guys have been doing it for hundreds of years. And getting the chemical balance right, and the distillation and the sugar levels of the raw spirit. These are all very technical things that they understand how to do. And it seems to me like we're just jumping into it head first. And there's been a couple of good examples I've seen, but I think for the most part, the rums are still quite rough, and that's going to need some time and development.
Yeah, I think, the rum culture overseas is so old, and sometimes I think it's nearly older than Scotch. And, there's so much experience, and I guess we're starting off with a clean slate here.
Yes, and I think we also don't really understand our raw materials yet. These guys, a lot of the producers produce sugarcane themselves. They're big sugarcane farms. And they manage the process from beginning to end, whereas in South Africa, the majority of the rum producers are buying their molasses from Hewlett's and other mass bulk producers.
Yeah.
So I know that there's one or two single estate rums being made in South Africa. I haven't tasted them yet, but I think for these products to have good quality, you need to have ultimate control over the raw material right through to the aging.
Yeah. And how's the growth for the Cachaça?
Cachaça has gone through a lot of ups and downs. It's been a very stable product in our portfolio, and it's done very well over the years.
You've had it for a long time, eh?
It was one of our first products,
Okay.
along with the bourbon. So we've been working with it for almost 19 years now. And it's doing well. I think, we could do a lot better in marketing the caipirinha and other ways of consuming it. We used to spend a lot of time working with the Brazilian embassy and promoting their national holidays, carnival, and those kind of events. And just with the growth of the business, it's taken a back seat. But we've put those things back on track now, and we're seeing slow but very measurable growth in the category again.
Okay. What else is there? You've got so many different specialty spirits. I'm trying to page through your website.
Yeah, there's a constant influx and outflux. Unfortunately, because we're independent, we suffer a lot from the globalization of spirits brands and the consolidation of companies. So we've been terribly affected by a lot of the brands jumping ship because they have suddenly been bought by a big company like Bacardi or one of the big five.
Yeah.
So we've lost brands like Fernet Branca, Grand Marnier. We lost Teeling Irish whiskey recently, and that was all due to big buyouts. So it's unfortunately a reality of the business, and it's not something that we can really guard against.
One of the distributors says there's only one certainty, and that is you're certainly going to lose a few brands.
Yeah, it's a pity because you're the one putting all the effort in, and the brand ultimately carries on where it left off. So it does make it difficult to grow in this industry. So the only real solution to it is to start your own brands.
Yeah, you're right. The bison grass. Tell me the story behind that. Have you still got that?
Yes, we do. It's a very interesting category, and again, something that we haven't really looked at in South Africa, and that's naturally infused vodkas. Now, this product is a very old and traditional way of making vodka. They used to make tonics out of the vodka in Poland, and this specifically is made from a type of grass called bison grass, and it only grows in a very specific area of Poland. The producers go and harvest it. They've got contractors and they villagers literally who go out and harvest the grass. They dry it, and then they take this grain vodka, mostly rye based, and they filter it. Almost you could to a degree say a similar process as making gin, except we're not using other botanicals here. It's literally drip filtered through these grass piles, and it takes on this amazing aromatic and herbaceous flavor, reminiscent of apples and cinnamon. And it's a product that we used to work with quite a lot in the cocktail bars in London. And still today, it's just absolutely amazing. So that and fresh cloudy apple juice and a rind of cucumber is one of the most refreshing things you'll drink in summer.
Okay, and is that? I mean, is there good response from the retail trade, or is it more for the cocktail bars?
I think there's both. A lot of people who've traveled to Poland have seen it, and they buy it because of the memories attached to it. It takes a huge amount of effort promoting this brand, and unfortunately, due to the technical limitations that we have for label requirements in South Africa, it costs us a lot of money to get this product okayed by the Department of Agriculture. So we literally have to order the stock in with labels on. We then have to go and reprint the new labels based on how the South African government wants them, strip them off the bottles, and reapply them. And that essentially takes up about 60% of all of the money they provide us in marketing support. But we do it because we think the product's worth it, and it's an exceptional liquid to have in South Africa.
Yeah, I think it's really time you take on that department and make them understand what problems they're causing with their archaic classifications.
Yeah, and it's about to get a lot more difficult. The US, as you might have heard, has recently passed legislation that they're now allowing 700 ml bottles, which is the European standard. into America. And we've already suffered the consequence of this, that a lot of the European producers and especially Scotch whiskey producers are just simply not going to make product in 750 ml bottles for South Africa anymore. So a lot of them are just saying they want to simplify production and minimize the amount of SKUs that they hold and bottle stock that they keep. So they only keeping 700 ml bottles. So unfortunately, a lot of brands are going to go missing out of South Africa as a result.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it's really beyond comprehension why we have these laws. Eh?
Well, it was originally started to protect the brandy industry by KWV and the Distillers Corporation. These laws are unfortunately not governed by government. It's actually by industry. So if industry says that they want a certain standard, that's what they get. But it has to go through 3 or 4 different departments who don't talk to one another and aren't linked in any way. So from the metrology department who regulates bottle size to the Department of Agriculture and the Liquor Board, you've got so many people involved and none of them want to listen to one another. It's almost impossible to get anything done.
Yeah. Emil, when you started this business, it was, I would say it was before social media. Now it must be a little bit easier, but a lot of these craft spirits were obviously built on the back of social media. How does that affect or help your business?
I don't think it helped or affected us. Advertising in any form is a very difficult thing to do right. In its best form, advertising is for the kind of brands that we work with, probably one of the worst forms of marketing, because at the price points that we work in, it's very difficult for a consumer to justify spending the money on something he's never tasted. So tasting the product is the most important, and only once you've built traction through consumers buying it in store, I think then it helps create momentum and develop the use of social media. So I don't think that any brand, in terms of what we're working with, was ever built solely on social media, and I don't think a lot of people really understand how to use and implement it successfully in order to drive volume. And like we see, especially in the gin category over the last few years, there's been a huge amount of one-time purchases, and a lot of it has given brands a false hope of growth or false sense of growth, because there were so many new people onboarding into the category that there weren't many repeat customers and brand loyalty being retained. And what we've seen is that even if you have 100,000 followers on Instagram, that doesn't result in people actually lifting a bottle off the shelf. So tasting and having a very solid marketing plan in place, which is cohesive and that doesn't just focus on one element, that's ultimately what's going to result in the people that stay in the game and those who fall away.
Yeah, and how are you able to communicate with your retail clients? I mean, it's such a small base and they spread all over the country. What does your team look like?
Well, look, we take a slightly different approach to it. There's 2 ways how you can look at distribution and how you communicate to either the trade or the consumer. But ultimately, it's down to the consumer. So if you're not consumer focused and getting them to walk into a store and ask for a product, you can have all the listings in the world, but if it's going to just sit there, you've only done half the job. So I think that the key that a lot of people miss is that consumers need to be the focus, not the retailers. The retailers are important from a product availability perspective, but if the consumer side isn't done, your product's just going to sit on shelf and ultimately be returned.
Mm-hmm. And how do you achieve that? Are they? I mean, there's Whiskey Live and places like that, and I'm sure that you attend those with your whiskey brands. We've
actually stopped. And for that sake, the majority of all of these other shows. I'm sure you've been to many of them yourself. We just realized that it's fine being there and it's fine getting people to taste your product, but ultimately the goal must be for them to buy your product, because the brand retention, again, only happens after the show. When you're sitting in a place and you're tasting 20, 30 gins or 40, 50 wines in the evening, it's almost impossible to remember what you like, especially when your head starts going fuzzy after 10. So those events tend to be pointless unless people take the bottle home where they actually taste it again in their own time or with friends the next time. So sales is always key, and we've turned away from doing the mass-focused events to smaller individual things where we can focus on the consumer one-on-one, and targeting the trade where we've got sommeliers coming in and learning at the distilleries and the winemakers, and through the technology that we were forced to learn how to have meetings over the internet. We've started doing so many virtual tastings live out of Scotland, out of Mexico, out of Venezuela, that it's made the interaction between consumer and brand so much more valuable and easy, especially where we sit in the point end of nowhere in the middle of the world. We don't often see the suppliers coming to visit. We don't see the master distillers coming to see us because it's just too far. I think that the technology's made that a lot easier now.
So do you offer direct-to-consumer tastings?
Yeah, we do a lot of them. So our team is focused on setting those up and hosting them. We've obviously got a few of our customers who are confident enough to host those tastings on their own. Yeah. But we like to work with the retailers to draw consumers in. Again, because of the price points of our products, the traditional stand in a shop with a table and get someone to go there and taste product doesn't work, because the majority of the people aren't willing to spend 800 to 1,000 Rand on a bottle of whatever it is we're selling. So the only way that you do that is by targeting the consumer in the right earning bracket, and even more important, not earning bracket, the disposable income bracket, and getting them to taste and then experience the brand.
Emil, and maybe I've been part to blame for this, with this whole, I guess, people collecting these premium brands in terms of the trade, where some of the bottles are really specializing in keeping stuff that is not mainstream. Is that working for the retail trade, do you think?
I think it certainly does. It depends on the category, however. Whiskey has been a huge draw card for them, especially from the limited edition perspective. Whiskey, I think, again, the collectability of whiskey, and just the mystique around it. People are just going batshit, to be perfectly honest. The amount of fights that we have, one of the brands that we import, Springbank, is hugely collectible, and we will often get allocations of anything from 12 to 30 bottles that has to service a whole country, and we've got customers 3 to 4 times that amount that all look for this product. So how do you distribute 30 bottles between 40 retailers? You're bound to upset people, because they not only it's not so much that they're upset what they're getting, it's the consumers putting pressure on them to get more stock, and there simply isn't more. So the limited edition, it certainly is a great drawing tool for people to get consumers to come into retail to shop for something that's new and different. Tequila is another category that's growing extremely fast. And people will come in, and if there's something new and different, they'll come in and snatch it up. And while they're there, they're doing their wine shopping and beer shopping and whatever else that they're going to be drinking the weekend, and what the wives and girlfriends want to drink. So it's always been a stock standard thing. In the past, it was always discounted product by doing loss leaders. Now the new thing is limited editions.
Yeah.
So it's certainly is helping retailers in differentiating. But I think more so than the product is the knowledge level in store.
Okay. So do the consumers learn about them, I guess, on social media of the distillers, and then they approach their retailer, or is it those specialty retailers like Whiskey Brothers that specialize in these products?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, the whiskey fanatics, they follow so many social media sites and blogs and other forms of communication from all over the world, that it's very easy to know what's coming and what's not coming. Most of these people are subscribed to distillery newsletters, so they know as soon as something new is released. I had a call today about someone asking about a product we're only getting in 3 months' time. So the guys are on it. Everybody, they know exactly what's happening, when it's happening. Obviously, there's other limited edition things, and that's where Whiskey Brothers been great, is their single cask program. They've done a lot of work there, developing unique products that are not generally available in the world. So it's something unique to South Africa and to Whiskey Brother. And that obviously draws a lot of interest for people to try new things and taste.
Yeah, it sounds to me like there should be an auction program, but that would kind of be, I mean, the whole point is to get people into the retail trade and not to buy them directly off an auction.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's one of those things that a lot of the people are buying 2 bottles, one to drink and one to keep. Because whiskey has become a commodity, and it's become a very... Springbank is the great example there. I mean, there were so much issues going around just with supply of the product that Whiskey Brother got quite a unique solution to the problem, and they started drawing tickets for who can get the product, so that no one person gets more benefit than the other. But unfortunately, it's part of the way it is. There's only so much whiskey and only so much sent to South Africa.
Yeah, that's an interesting solution, because normally if there's a shortage, the price goes up.
But the distilleries don't want it. I mean, they want their whiskey to be consumed. Yeah. So they don't want people to hoard them and hold them back. They want people to drink them and enjoy it. That's what it's for at the end of the day. Yeah. So we've agreed with them that we won't push prices through the roof just for the sake of not having it. We'll still try and offer as much value as we can. But when you get so little of all of these things, it's almost impossible to help everybody.
Well, I like the lottery idea. Makes sense.
It's a serious way of doing it without causing too much tension.
Yeah. Well, Emil, it sounds like your business wasn't too badly affected by the whole lockdown. I'm sure it was, but it sounds like you're back on your feet. And
I think everybody's going to battle for a while still. We got through it by managing the business very, very carefully and manage expenses. We went so far as to even cut off the water to our building so that we wouldn't spend money on leaking taps and all the rest. So, I think just good corporate governance was key during this time, and those who were good at it they threw it, and they'll continue being successful.
Mm. And in terms of your trade representation, you are obviously in Cape Town. Where else have you got team members?
We've got Cape Town, Joburg, Durban. We've got physical people of our own on the ground. We outsource distribution in Hoedspruit to a company called Safari Wines. We're busy chatting to someone for the Southern Cape, but typically it's not a good market for us because of the price point of the items. So it would never warrant us to spend money on a full-time person in a lot of those markets. But we focus on the main financial hubs, and that's Joburg, Durban, Cape Town. Okay. And Pretoria.
And where can people find out more about your company? You've got a website?
We've got the website www.liquidity.co.za. then also Instagram handles at Liquidity SA, at Liquidity SA, and I think it's the same for Facebook.
Okay. Emil, thank you for your time today. It's certainly you got some interesting products, and I look forward to visiting you in the Cape soon.
Wonderful, and thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to our stories here online. In the show notes, you will also find a link where you can subscribe to become part of our community and be notified when we upload our latest content.